The streak of red against white snow should have been nothing. Another careless drunk. Another frozen homeless body for the morning cleanup crew. Kong Ji-hoon had seen 17 winters in this business, and the cold claimed someone every night. But when Camila Reyes's body jerked with one last shuddering breath, something primal and unwanted exploded through 15 years of carefully constructed ice. He'd executed men for breathing wrong. He'd watched enemies freeze to death without blinking. Yet his feet were moving before his mind could stop them, expensive Berluti boots crunching through snow that reached his knees. Who left you here to die? The thought came with the same deadly calm he used before giving kill orders, and Ji-hoon realized with distant horror that he wanted names. Wanted blood. Her lips were blue beneath brown skin turned gray with cold. No coat. The thin sweater she wore was soaked through, clinging to her frame like an icy shroud. She didn't respond when he dropped to one knee beside her, didn't flinch when his gloved hand touched her throat, searching for a pulse. That absence of response, that utter stillness, ignited something in him that had nothing to do with the criminal empire he'd built through calculated brutality. For the first time in 15 years of ruling this frozen city's underworld with absolute control, Kong Ji-hoon felt the world tilt beneath him. He lifted her into his arms, and her head lolled against his chest, dead weight and fading warmth. He commanded in Korean, then English, his voice cracking on desperation he didn't recognize. Breathe. The snow fell harder, and the world shifted between what he was and what he was becoming. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this. Camila Reyes had survived in this frozen city for 43 days without being noticed. 43 days of sleeping in the storage room of the church on 5th Street, where Father Miguel looked the other way. 43 days of cash, only dishwashing jobs that paid half minimum wage because she couldn't prove she existed. 43 days of being so invisible, so insignificant, that the snow seemed to fall through her instead of on her. 28 years of running had taught her the crucial skill, how to move through the world without disturbing it. She'd perfected the art in Sao Paulo, hiding from her mother's boyfriend. Refined it in Lima, disappearing from Ricardo's men. Mastered it here, in this city where winter never ended and people looked through brown faces like they were windows. She'd learned to quiet her breathing around important people, to fold herself smaller in crowded spaces, to work 3 times as hard while being paid half as much, and to never ever make eye contact with men who smelled like expensive cologne and old violence. Today, that careful invisibility had failed her. The restaurant owner who'd promised her a week's wages had laughed when she asked for payment. "Sue me," he'd sneered in Mandarin-accented English, knowing exactly what she couldn't do. She'd walked out into a blizzard with $6 in her pocket and nowhere left to go. The church was 12 blocks away. She'd made it to 7. Her body had simply stopped, bone cold and exhausted, collapsing into snow that felt like the softest bed she'd ever known. The cold had stopped hurting somewhere around block 9. By block 7 it felt almost warm, peaceful. This is how I die, she'd thought with strange clarity. Invisible. Forgotten. Just like Mama wanted. Then the world went white. She should have stayed unconscious. Should have slipped away into the cold without ever knowing who found her, without ever seeing the face of the man who would destroy every careful wall she'd built. But Camila had never been good at doing what she should. She woke to suffocating heat and the scent of antiseptic. Her body screamed as sensation flooded back, the violent pins and needles of returning circulation, the raw ache of frostbitten fingers, the sharp sting of an 4 in her arm. The room was dark, unfamiliar, expensive in a way that made her stomach clench with instinctive fear. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city far below, a sprawl of lights against endless black. She was high up, very high up, the kind of high up that required security codes and private elevators and the sort of money that made people like her disappear. Run. The thought came with pure survival instinct, But when she tried to move, her body refused. Too weak. Too damaged. You're awake. The voice came from the shadows near the door. Korean accent wrapped around perfect English, each word chosen with the precision of a man who understood that language was a weapon. Camilla's heart stopped, then resumed at triple speed. A shape detached from the darkness. Broad-shouldered. Moving with the casual confidence of a predator in his own territory. When he reached the edge of the lamplight, Camilla forgot how to breathe. He was devastating in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty. Sharp features carved from ice and arrogance, dark eyes that tracked her with the focus of something ancient and hungry. His black hair was pushed back carelessly, revealing the intricate tattoo that crawled up the left side of his neck, a dragon or serpent, she couldn't tell in the low light. He wore a black henley pushed up to his elbows, revealing more ink on his forearms, Korean characters and geometric patterns that disappeared beneath the fabric. His hands were scarred across the knuckles, old violence written in white lines against golden-brown skin. This was not a man who saved people. This was a man who ended them. Who are you? Her voice cracked on the words, hoarse from cold and disuse. He stepped closer, and she instinctively pressed herself back into the pillows, a small movement, a reflexive retreat. He stopped immediately, something flickering across his expression too quick to read. Kong Ji-hoon. He said it like she should know the name. Like everyone knew the name. You collapsed on my street. Your street. 2 words that said everything about who he was. What he was. I should go. Camilla tried to sit up, and the room spun violently. Thank you for. You'll stay. Not a request. Not a suggestion. A simple statement of fact delivered in that same calm tone. She finally looked directly at him, meeting those dark eyes that missed nothing. I don't even know you. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. No, but I'm the man who decided you were worth saving. And Kong Ji-hoon doesn't make that decision lightly. He moved to the chair beside the bed, settling into it with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in his own power. Up close, she could see the thin scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the faint shadow of exhaustion beneath his eyes, the dangerous intelligence in the way he studied her. What's your name? She hesitated, weighing the cost of truth against the cost of lies. But something about the way he looked at her, like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve, made lying feel impossible. Camilla. Camilla Reyes. Camilla, he repeated, the syllables strange and perfect in his mouth. Why were you dying in my snow, Camilla Reyes? Because I have nowhere else to die, she thought. But what she said was, I fell. His expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Don't, he said quietly, with the same deadly calm she imagined he used before ordering executions. Lie to me. And in that moment, Camilla understood with terrible clarity that she'd been saved by the most dangerous thing in this frozen city. And there was no walking away from Kong Ji-hoon's protection without paying a price she couldn't afford. The safe house existed in the forgotten margin between the city's legitimate face and its criminal underbelly. Ji-hoon carried Camilla through a private entrance that bypassed his usual network. No drivers, no guards, no witnesses to report that Kong Ji-hoon had brought a half-frozen woman to his most secure location. He laid her on the bed in the master suite with unexpected gentleness, then disappeared into the bathroom. When he returned, his sleeves were rolled higher, revealing more of the intricate tattoos that marked him as something other than civilized. He worked with clinical efficiency, checking her extremities for frostbite, adjusting the 4-drip he'd somehow procured, wrapping her blackened fingers in gauze with the practiced precision of someone who'd treated wounds before. Donde estoy? The words escaped her in Spanish, fear stripping away her careful English. Ji-hoon's hands stilled. His eyes lifted to hers, dark and unreadable. Segura, he said, the pronunciation awkward but deliberate. Camilla's breath caught. You speak. No. He returned to wrapping her fingers, his touch careful despite the violence written in his scarred knuckles. But I learn fast. The intimacy was suffocating. She was trapped in his bed, wearing his clothes, an oversized black shirt that smelled like expensive detergent and something darker, masculine. Every breath she took was borrowed. Every heartbeat was his to allow or stop. I need to leave. She tried to pull her hand back, but he held firm. You need to heal. His Korean accent thickened with something that might have been concern. Frostbite, hypothermia, malnutrition. Each diagnosis landed like an accusation. How long since you ate? That's not. Cuánto tiempo? The Spanish was rough, but the demand was crystal clear. 3 days, she whispered. Something dangerous flickered across his expression. He stood abruptly, moved to the door, made a single phone call in rapid Korean. 20 minutes later, soup arrived. Not from a restaurant, but homemade, the container still warm from someone's kitchen. He sat on the edge of the bed and lifted the spoon to her lips like she was something fragile, something precious. Why are you doing this? Her voice cracked on the question. Ji-hoon's eyes met hers, and for one devastating moment, she saw past the crime lord to the man beneath, lonely, lethal, and utterly lost. Because, he said softly in mangled Spanish, you looked at me like I was human. Camila's heart broke and mended in the space between one breath and the next, and she understood that salvation came in the most dangerous forms. Ji-hoon's phone rang at 3 in the morning. He answered in clipped Korean, listened for 90 seconds, then ended the call without a word. Camila watched from the bed, her fingers still wrapped in his careful bandages, as his expression shifted from neutral to something sharp and calculating. Camila Reyes, he said slowly, turning to face her. No record in immigration. No social security number. No legal existence in this country for the past 43 days. He crossed his arms, leaning against the windowsill. But before that, you existed very loudly in Lima. Her blood turned to ice water. I don't know what. Ricardo Vargas. Ji-hoon's pronunciation was perfect now, each syllable loaded with knowledge and warning. Cartel operations across 3 countries. 62 confirmed kills. And you were his accountant's daughter. Camila's hands trembled so violently the 4-line tugged at her vein. How did you? I own this city's information. He moved closer, each step deliberate. The question is why you ran. Why a powerful man wants a girl who managed his father's numbers. She could lie. Should lie. But the way he looked at her, expectant, patient, like he already knew the truth and was simply waiting for her to confirm it, made deception feel impossible. I found the accounts, she whispered in broken English, then switched to Spanish when the words came faster. Los registros de trata. Trafficking. Young girls from my neighborhood. I thought if I gave the evidence to the police. But the police belonged to him. See. Tears burned her eyes. He killed my contact, my father. Everyone who touched the files. Her voice cracked. He won't stop. He can't let me live knowing what I know. Silence stretched between them, cold and assessing. When Ji-hoon finally spoke, his voice was deadly calm. You brought a target onto my territory. Camila flinched as if struck. I'll leave. Tonight. You'll stay exactly where you are. He pulled out his phone, fired off a series of texts in Korean. Sung-ho will upgrade the building's security. You'll have clothes delivered by morning. Nothing traceable. He tossed a burner phone onto the bed beside her. This number reaches me. Only me. Why? The question came out desperate. Why would you risk? Ji-hoon's expression softened almost imperceptibly, a crack in the ice that ruled him. Because Ricardo Vargas doesn't own this winter, he said quietly. And neither does he own you. Camila healed slowly, and in healing she began to see. Ji-hoon kept a routine with religious precision. 6 a.m. training, 9 a.m. departure, midnight return. He ate alone at the obsidian dining table, always the same chair facing the windows. He drank green tea from a single porcelain cup, never touching the 11 others in the cabinet. His books were organized by height, untouched and perfect. His home was a mausoleum of wealth and absolute control. It suffocated her. On the 5th day, she left a flower drawn on a napkin beside his teacup, a simple rose in borrowed pen. On the 7th, she reorganized his books by subject instead of size, creating small chaos in his perfect order. On the 10th, she moved his chair 2 feet to the left. She was dusting the bookshelves when his voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing?" Camila turned to find Ji-hoon standing in the doorway, still wearing his coat, snow melting on his shoulders. He was early, 3 hours early. "Reading your titles," she said carefully. "You moved my things." Not a question. An accusation delivered with dangerous calm. "I organized them properly. They were organized." He crossed the room, picked up one of the rearranged books, a Korean poetry collection now sitting beside Machiavelli. "By height. By loneliness." The words escaped before she could stop them. "You arrange everything to be seen, not touched. Not read. Not loved." His jaw tightened. "You don't know. This house is a tomb," Camila interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. "Beautiful and cold and dead. You live here like a ghost." Ji-hoon stared at her, something dangerous flickering in his dark eyes. Then, impossibly, his expression shifted, confusion bleeding through the ice. "Why do you care?" "Because you saved me. Because you speak broken Spanish when you think I'm scared. Because—" She stopped, the truth catching in her throat. "Because what?" He moved closer, closing the distance until she could smell winter and bergamot on his skin. "Because I see you," she whispered. "And you're so alone it terrifies me." Silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither could name. When Ji-hoon finally spoke, his voice was raw. "I find myself looking at you." He said it like a confession, like an admission of guilt. "At breakfast. When I leave. When I return." His hand lifted, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. "I haven't looked at anyone in 15 years. Haven't wanted to." Camila's breath caught. "Ji-hoon, you're destroying my control," he murmured, and it sounded like both accusation and prayer. The knock came at dawn, sharp, urgent, wrong. Ji-hoon answered the door in yesterday's clothes, and Camila heard rapid Korean from the living room. A younger man's voice, deferential but insistent. Then Ji-hoon's response, so cold it frosted the air. When the door closed, she found him standing motionless, staring at nothing. "What happened?" "Min-jae saw you." His voice was empty. "My second lieutenant. He called you a liability. A distraction that makes me weak." Camila's stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" Ji-hoon turned, and his eyes were the ones she'd seen that first night. Lethal, distant, carved from winter itself. "I told him if he questioned my decisions again, I'd personally ensure he never questioned anything." He paused. "Then I removed him from my inner circle." "Ji-hoon, you can't." "I already did." He moved past her toward the bedroom. "Get dressed. We're upgrading security again." But security meant nothing when Ricardo moved first. The call came 3 hours later. Ji-hoon's expression darkened as he listened, his knuckles white around the phone. When he ended the call, he looked at Camila with something that might have been grief. "The cafe on Morrison Street. The one that launders money for my operations." His voice was carefully neutral. "Someone firebombed it an hour ago. No casualties, but the message is clear." "Ricardo," Camila whispered. "Your ghost is here." Ji-hoon crossed his arms, and she saw him physically rebuild the walls she'd spent weeks dismantling. "You must leave this city, or I must choose between you and everything I've built." The words landed like bullets. "Then I'll leave." Camila stood, her voice steady despite the shattering inside her chest. "Tonight, I'll disappear again. You'll never." "No." The single word cracked like thunder. "You just said." "I said you must leave. I didn't say I'd let you." Ji-hoon moved toward her with predatory grace, backing her against the wall. His hands braced on either side of her head, caging her in. Do you understand what you've done to me? I'd burn this entire empire before I'd watch you walk back into the cold. That's insane, she breathed. Yes. His forehead touched hers, and his voice dropped to something raw and desperate. You made me insane. You made me human. And now I can't. He stopped, jaw clenched. I won't let you go, even if it destroys us both. Camilla's hands found his face, trembling. Then what do? We fight, Ji-hoon whispered. Together. The intercept happened at midnight in the warehouse district. Ji-hoon had left explicit orders for Camilla to stay at the safe house, but she'd followed anyway, hiring a cab with the emergency cash he'd given her. She needed to understand what fighting together meant in his world. She wished she hadn't. 4 of Ricardo's men arrived in an unmarked van. Ji-hoon's people were waiting, 8 shadows materializing from the darkness. The confrontation was surgical. No guns too loud. Just brutal efficiency that ended in less than 3 minutes. Camilla watched from behind a shipping container as Ji-hoon stood over a man bleeding onto concrete, speaking in quiet Korean. The man answered in broken English, begging. Ji-hoon's expression never changed. He gave a single nod, and one of his men stepped forward with something that glinted in the dim light. She didn't stay to see the rest. By the time Ji-hoon returned to the safe house, dawn was breaking and Camilla had witnessed the cleanup. The plastic tarps, the industrial cleaners, the casual way his men had joked in Korean while erasing evidence of violence. She'd vomited twice in the cab ride back. Now she was packing the few belongings he'd given her into a duffel bag, hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the zipper. Camilla! His voice came from the doorway, still wearing the black tactical clothes from the warehouse, spattered with what might have been blood or might have been snow. You followed me. Not a question. Yes. She didn't look at him, couldn't. I needed to see who you really are. And now you have. He moved into the room, each step deliberate. So you're running. You fixed nothing tonight. Her voice cracked. You just showed me the blood that covers you. The blood that will cover me if I stay. Camilla. Ricardo will send more men. You'll kill them. And more. Then more. She finally turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. This is your solution. An endless war. Bodies piling up until one of them is mine. Or yours. Ji-hoon's expression was carved from stone, but his hands were trembling. What would you have me do? Let them take you. I'd have you let me go. She zipped the bag closed with finality. Before we destroy each other. No. He crossed the distance between them, gripping her arms. I will not. You don't have a choice. Camilla pulled free, shouldering the bag. I won't love a man who only knows how to solve problems with violence. I can't. She moved toward the door, and Ji-hoon stood frozen, watching the only warmth in his winter walk away. Camilla made it 3 blocks before he found her. The snow was falling harder now, each flake a small assault, and she was crying so hard she could barely see. His hand closed around her wrist, gentle despite the desperation. Please. The word broke on his lips. Don't. Let me go, Ji-hoon. I can't. He turned her to face him, and she saw something she'd never seen before. Tears tracking down his face, freezing in the bitter wind. You think I don't know what I am? You think I haven't lived in this blood for 15 years, hating every compromise, every kill, every choice that kept me breathing? Then why? Because survival was all I had. His voice cracked, raw and desperate. Until I found you dying in my snow and felt something I'd killed inside myself wake up screaming. I can't love someone like Ricardo, she sobbed. I can't love a man whose existence means ruin. I am not him. Ji-hoon pulled her closer, his hands framing her face with trembling reverence. Ricardo traffics in innocence. I traffic in power. But you. His voice dropped to a whisper. You are the only person who makes me feel heat in this winter. The only one who looks at me and sees something worth saving. You can't change, Camila said, but her hands were gripping his coat now, holding him close. This is who you are. Then teach me. He pressed his forehead to hers, breath coming in ragged gasps. Teach me how to be better. How to be with you. I have legitimate businesses, hotels, import companies, real estate. I have lawyers in 6 countries and enough money to fight Ricardo through every legal channel that exists. His hands moved to her shoulders, desperate and sure. I will dismantle him without spilling blood if that's what you need. I will learn to be the man you can love. Ji-hoon. I love you. The words fell like a confession, like the last secret he'd kept locked behind ice and violence. I'd burn down the empire before I let you walk back into the cold. Before I lose the only thing that makes me human. Camila looked into his eyes and saw 15 years of loneliness finally breaking open. Saw the terrified man beneath the crime lord. Saw everything she'd been too afraid to hope for. You frozen fool, she whispered, then kissed him. And the winter stopped mattering. They returned to the safe house still tangled together. Snow melting in their hair. Salt from tears and kisses frozen on their skin. Camila pulled back first, her hands still gripping his coat. Her eyes fierce despite the vulnerability. I love you, you frozen fool, she said, the words half laugh, half sob. But love isn't enough if we don't survive this. Ji-hoon nodded, his thumb tracing the curve of her jaw. Then we survive together. Tell me what you need. No more killing. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. Not Ricardo's men. Not anyone. We dismantle him the way I tried to. With evidence, with law, with everything legitimate you have at your disposal. It will take time. Months, maybe years. Then we take the time. Camila stepped back, straightening her spine. And I need to learn your world. Not the blood, the real parts. The businesses. Contacts. The legitimate empire you said you have. Something shifted in Ji-hoon's expression. Surprise, respect, perhaps fear at how completely she was choosing to stand beside him. You want to be part of this. I want to be your partner, not your secret. She met his eyes with unwavering clarity. If we're fighting together, I need to understand every weapon we have. Ji-hoon pulled out his phone, began scrolling through contacts. I have 3 lawyers specializing in international crime. 2 investigative journalists who owe me favors. A contact in Interpol who's been trying to build a case against Ricardo for years. He looked up. And legitimate holdings in 7 countries worth more than Ricardo's entire operation. Then we start there. Camila moved to the window, watching the snow fall over the city. We build the case. We expose him. We bury him in litigation and seizures and international warrants until there's nothing left. It won't be clean, Ji-hoon warned, coming to stand beside her. He'll fight back. Try to hurt us through legal channels, through media, through. Then we fight smarter. She turned to him, took his scarred hands in hers. And you teach me Korean. I teach you proper Spanish. We learn each other's languages because we're going to need them. Ji-hoon's lips curved into the first real smile she'd ever seen. Small, tentative, but devastatingly real. When do we start? Now, Camila said, and pulled him toward the desk where his laptop waited. Show me everything. Every asset, every contact, every legitimate door we can use to cage a monster. Ji-hoon sat, and she stood behind him, her hands on his shoulders as the screen illuminated their faces. Together, they began to build their war. 8 months later, Ricardo Vargas was arrested at the Lima airport by Interpol agents. His accounts frozen across 14 countries. His cartel dismantled by the same evidence Camila had once tried to give away. The journalists had been relentless. The lawyers surgical. Ji-hoon's contacts had moved like a coordinated symphony, each note played at precisely the right moment. It cost Ji-hoon 40% of his empire. Businesses sold to fund the legal assault, territory ceded to maintain legitimacy, bridges burned with associates who couldn't stomach his transformation. He'd made enemies of men who once called him brother. But when the final warrant was issued, when Ricardo's face appeared on every international news outlet, Ji-hoon felt something he hadn't experienced in 15 years. Camila found him standing in the same spot where he'd first discovered her, the street corner where snow had nearly claimed her life. She wore a cream coat now, tailored and warm, her papers legal and her name no longer a whispered secret. She'd learned Korean with the same fierce determination she brought to everything, and Ji-hoon's Spanish was now fluent enough to dream in both languages. "You're thinking too much," she said in Korean, slipping her hand into his. "I'm thinking about the first time I saw you." He pulled her close, his tattooed arms wrapping around her with a permanence that still surprised him. "Half frozen, dying, invisible. I'm not invisible anymore." She tilted her face up to his, snowflakes catching in her dark hair. "Thanks to you. No, you were never invisible. I was just blind." Ji-hoon pressed his lips to her forehead, feeling her warmth seep into his bones. "We made a home in the cold, didn't we?" Camila's smile was radiant, transforming the winter landscape into something beautiful. "With you, the cold doesn't matter." They stood together as snow fell around them, no longer running, no longer hiding. The city stretched before them. His kingdom, now hers too. Not built on blood and shadows, but on the impossible choice to love despite the cost. Ji-hoon had spent 15 years rejecting everything human, convinced that warmth was weakness and connection was death. Then a girl from the south had collapsed in his snow, and he'd learned the most dangerous truth of all. That love was the only thing worth the risk of breaking. That some frozen hearts could thaw if the right person refused to let go. Camila kissed him, tasting winter and forever, and they walked home through the snow, together, safe and finally completely seen. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.